community to come together to hear from entrepreneurs and business owners in the community that are pushing the needle forward in the community and trying their best and working hard to achieve really great things. Heather Beebe is our guest speaker tonight. Let's all give her a round. Because she's doing just that, right? And if you haven't met Heather yet, I'm not going to speak on her behalf because we're going to hear all about her tonight. So make sure you got some good questions too, because we've got time for questions at the end. But if you haven't heard about Innovation Collective, we are a group of very curious individuals who are popping up in communities all across the country, okay? We're in 6 cities now. We're based out of Idaho, where we've created a 45,000 square foot co-working space with anchor retail and a private membership structure. And the whole premise behind what we're doing is to really try to bring communities together to try to pursue the American dream again. We feel strongly that if we can get communities to start acting like communities again, understanding what everybody's working on, and understanding what everybody's really good at so we can share our skill sets and we can really start to lift the economic infrastructure in the cities that we go into. Again, so we've been in Utica for about a year now. We host a Fireside Chat every month. We also hold Coffee and Concepts on the first and third Wednesday of every month. So I see some very familiar faces in the room today. A lot of you guys have been to Coffee and Concepts or Fireside Chats before. It's a really great time to come out and sort of meet some new people, talk to some familiar faces about things that you're working on so you can get the resources you need to push your ideas forward, okay? Last but not least, I just got to do a quick plug for our Think Big Festival. If you guys are on the Facebook group, great. If you're not, join Innovation Collective Utica Facebook group. It's a very active and growing group. It's a great place to throw ideas and concepts out to get feedback. And also just a great place to get connected to others. But at the end of October, we're throwing a Think Big Festival. It's going to be a combination of in-person and virtual events, and we've got the likes of Josh Childress, who used to play in the NBA, and some other very big names. Arabian Prince, who was a founding member of the rap group NWA, and on the album in 1988, is going to be in person at the Thinkubator October 22nd on Thursday. We've got about 50 spots available. So if you're interested in attending that event in person, please reach out to me, and I'll make sure you're there. So again, without further ado, let's give Heather Beebe a big round of applause for being our Fireside Chat speaker.
Thank you.
So we've kind of got a little bit of a flow here, but I want you guys to think of some awesome questions for Heather at the end. And we get a chance to hear about what Heather's sort of a little bit about her personal story, a little bit of her professional career. And it's kind of interesting because during the pandemic, Heather and I actually met each other for the first time virtually. And then we were showing up at Galaxy Media the other day to do a radio bit, and she had actually pointed out that it was the first time that we had actually met in person, which I thought was kind of funny. So here we are. This is the second time we've hung out in person, and we get to roast you at One Jenny on a Wednesday night. So let's do it. So Heather, let's start out here. So where did you grow up, and what kind of family would you say you grew up in?
Okay, so I'm from Madison, New York, which is a really tiny, small town in the hills of Madison County. And super small area. I graduated with 38 students, Class D school, and I was raised by a single mom with an older sister and a younger brother, which says a lot about my personality.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Family dynamics play a big role. Anybody else? Any interesting family dynamics, right? Yes, absolutely. It makes us who we are.
Everybody raise your hand.
Everybody raise your hand. Everybody comes from an interesting family. But we talk about that because it really does shape the kind of people who we are, right? For sure. So that's cool. Thank you for sharing that. Did you go to college?
I did. So I started out, I graduated high school, and then I studied abroad first in Brazil. Did that for a year, came back. This was pre-internet times, right. So you could apply to colleges online. So I applied paperwork-wise and wanted to go in all these places and just didn't get there in time. I was sending applications from Brazil. So I came back and I was so disappointed that I didn't get to go where I wanted to go. And I had to go somewhere where I could transfer out of. So I started at MV. And in hindsight, I'm so thankful for that experience. I ended up finishing from MV, never going anywhere because I loved it. And so I started at MV. After MV, I moved to Europe for a couple of years. I lived in Norway and then returned back. That's when we opened the first business. And then I ended up returning to school when I was 28 and finishing my bachelor's by the time I was 30.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't the traditional order of things, but it was really important, I think, for my growth that it went that way.
So not everybody just applies to school in Brazil. So walk me through that.
So I'm glad to see some Rotary faces in the community tonight because it was Rotary Youth Exchange that I applied for.
Gotcha.
And that came a really good friend of my grandfather, Jerry Barnes from Waterville. He's a business owner in Waterville. He came up to me one day when I was working one of my jobs as a kid, and he was like, "You would make a great exchange student." and brought me the application, and it just took somebody like that to wake me up to that, you know. And Rotary was in my life, so it wasn't that I didn't know anything about Rotary, but studying abroad was something very foreign to me, like literally, no pun intended, right? So that was significant in that decision, that he just saw that in me and said that, and I did it. So applied to, you can't really pick where you're going. You can pick 5 places, and I was like, okay, so I'm studying French, I'll pick France, I'll pick Australia because they don't have to learn any language, and that would be easy, right? And then I was Italy because it was like, oh, this, you know, glamorous place, and then I played soccer through high school, so like Brazil, because that's all they have there is soccer and monkeys. So I never imagined though that I would get Brazil, you know, and to be honest, I was really disappointed the day I got the letter that you're going to be going to Brazil, because I hadn't done anything about Brazil. I didn't know anything about Brazil. Even up to the day I left, I had packed like a lot of extra things that I didn't think they would have there. It was very third world, you know. Right. But that's how that all happened. It was just random, really.
So
random.
You get the letter in the mail, and it was like, off to Brazil. Here we go.
Here we go. Yeah, and all my friends were going to college, and because it was my gap year, so I graduated high school. I was young. I was a young graduate. I was the baby of the class. I was still only 17. I didn't turn 18 until December of that year, so I was after the cutoff, going to school very young. So, so I get to Brazil. You know, I got my bag packed of all these toiletries and things I didn't think that they may have there, you know, thinking like it's really, like I'm going to be with the monkeys, literally. And that was my first eye-opening experience. Like, wow, you know, I don't really know what's going on in the world, you know, and I don't know enough. And it was opened my eyes big time. I had a steady foundation coming in, you know, I was willing to do it, but I didn't really understand until I was there, really the realities, you know, of what I had in life and what I didn't have exposure to.
Right.
So.
And you alluded to Norway too. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, you come back from Brazil, you're home for a while, finish college, and then off to Norway.
Yeah. So
that's pretty
all
standard,
good stories
right?
Start with a boy, right? And I started dating a Norwegian in college and I think it was funny because being in Brazil really opened my eyes to the international community. And I was super interested in people who had neat stories, living abroad, being from abroad. It's just different. It's very different than people who are from here. You know, they think differently about things. So I was interested in that. And so we got married in the States and moved to Norway with the intention to stay there. And my idea of living abroad was Brazil, you know, very Latin culture and, you know, very loud, and I'm, you know, running late and all the things that go along with my personality. And
Norway was not that.
Norway was not that, yeah. So, but it was beautiful. It was a great experience, you know, and I, in hindsight, I can say to the Norwegian people in general, they're very genuine and pure, you know, so it was a good lesson for me. I was there for a couple of years, and living somewhere and being somewhere temporarily was also very different. And I returned home. My mother was ill too. That was a big part of my return home. But you know, but it was a great experience for me. My first daughter was born there in socialized medicine, which was a great experience. Gave me some eye-opening perspective on that. You know, living in a country with 4.5 million people gave me some interesting perspective. You know, the way that they use natural resources, the way that they care about the health of the people overall, not just like today, like I'm gonna do something healthy. They genuinely invest in ways to make, you know, their lifestyle healthier. So that was just all really good experiences for me that I can bring forward into my life here back in America.
So traveling abroad played a really big role, you'd say, sort of like your perspective and how you see the world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It added to my small town mentality. You know, I'm from a small town.
Sure.
That was like my roots. I'm proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't be who I was today if I didn't have those experiences doing that.
Now, what was your first job like? And was it in Brazil?
No, we weren't allowed to work down there. But I would ride my bike and do some things down there. I was really busy down there, but I wasn't allowed to work. Before I even went to Brazil, I had working papers when I was like 15. And I worked in a pizzeria, and you ran your tail off, you know, and it was very sweaty and hot. And I remember, you know, going out with your friends and pulling all-nighters and having a good time, and then having to like be at work the next day, you know.
Rough.
So there was a box of that they kept all the pizza boxes back there, and I would go back there. We would take turns taking a little nap. It was really hard. But that was my first job, and babysitting. I mean, obviously.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we got some career and life questions now. So
Sure.
so you guys have been to Fireside Chats before. We always like to touch a little bit on the personal side because it's important to kind of talk about, those experiences that make you who you are and, your interests and the activities that you pursue. So what would you consider your greatest accomplishment in your professional life? And I guess before we ask that question, you guys should all know that Heather Beebe is like a staple of this community. If you haven't met her yet, let's give her a round. Give her a round. But she's just a really awesome person, and I'm so happy to have gotten to know you. And I've gotten to know you through your work with Unstoppable You, which is a life coaching business. So for those of you who don't know, and I don't want to speak, you can speak about it a little bit more, but would you say that your current job as a life coach is your greatest accomplishment?
Yeah, absolutely. It's what I want to be doing versus what I should do or chasing the finances to get by, right? So when you have a lifetime change and you're kind of like scrambling to get by and you just take whatever you can get, it doesn't really solve your problems. You go to work every day and you hate it because you're chasing the money. I know I've chased a dream, and now 3.5 years into it, it works. When you chase something you actually want to be doing.
And so, does that resonate with anybody else in the room here? Just like, just chasing the dollar, right? I mean, that's something that we talk a little bit about at Innovation Collective because we're really interested in everybody sort of functioning and being optimal human beings in the communities that they live in so that they can go on to pursue amazing things like Unstoppable You. Not to say like you didn't have a career in flipping pizzas, like I'm sure your pizzas are delicious.
Yeah. Well, I think...
and then we're not knocking pizza delivery by any means.
Every job is important.
But But was there an element of fear when you decided to make that switch, right? Because I think there's that moment in everybody's personal and professional life where they say, you know what, I'm done chasing the dollar, right? I really want to pursue something that makes sense to me. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Sure. So, you obviously got to go through situations. You can't put the cart in front of the horse. You have to experience different things that wake you up to realize this is not it, right? You can't say this was a waste of time. Never. You're learning something every day. And going through life experiences, you have things that happen. And as far as Unstoppable You, I had situations that happened that put me in the position to be like, all right, now or never. It doesn't mean that everything, like I said, nothing is wasted. It's strategic, right? So if you have a job right now that you don't like and you're just grinding, doing this job you don't like, make a plan to change it, sure. But make strategic plans, So I'm going to work every day at a job I don't like because it's going to bring me to this. So Unstoppable You was a note, it was written in my notebook for a while. It didn't just happen, but then one day when I got fired, it happened.
That was an abrupt change. Yes.
Yeah, it was a really abrupt change. I welcomed it. I gave my 30-day notice, but it was kind of like in that 30-day notice, the intention of a 30-day notice was to give time to fill my position and also give me time to fill my income change, right? I, at the time, was a mother of 3, single mother of 3, and you don't just lose your job. That's not good. So I sat in Bite Bakery the morning that all happened, and I got my notebook, and that's what I always go back to my writing. I love to write, and I'm looking at what I'm writing, and why am I not doing this? People reach out to have coffee with me, to pick my brain on this or pick my brain on that. Why am I not charging for this? These aren't my friends. They're people who I met doing this, or people that I've bartended for, they want to hear what I have to say. Why am I not charging for this? So I started Unstoppable You with no idea what the hell was going to happen, and I didn't even have the certification that I took, but it's not a governed industry, and I thought, if I have good ethics and I'm fair and I hear them, I can do something, right? So I started to do it for free. With the idea that this will all pan out. And then I started to study different materials and things like that to have something to work with, not just say, oh, I'm a life coach. Anyone can be a life coach, right? So, and that's how it just kind of blossomed from there. And
And I would imagine being a life coach, like you have to possess some element of vulnerability, right? I mean, there has to be some element of you sharing your own personal life experiences with others to kind of help them with either the trauma or whatever it is that they're seeking professionally.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to be willing to face your shit. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not willing to look at somebody else's.
Right.
And that was the biggest thing I did that year. I put myself through some intensive retreats where I was facing, my own things. The things that I should have faced years ago. And I just kept shoving it under the rug because you don't have time. Like that, yeah. But then you see, the universe keep giving you these lessons that until you've opened your heart to them, you're not going to see them go. you won't grow bigger than that, right? So, and that was the ultimate, like, oh, you just got fired. Like,
time for change.
Yeah, like, there you go.
So your greatest accomplishment, you'd say, would be your current business?
So it started virtual, but I think the twist in there that was the greatest accomplishment, when I really had to high five and take it for what it was worth, was the first retreat. Because I took a group of women to Puerto Rico, which was a place I spent many dark days. And talk about being vulnerable. It was really
so sunny there, though.
Yeah. I know, but it's something I had to go through in my life to get to where I was, but every location that I went to there that just filled my heart, but yet I was alone, so it was just something was going on. I didn't know what. I didn't know how this was supposed to fit into my life. Something special about this place. And so it just was like, after Maria, I thought, well, I want to take business down there. I wanted to give some economic impact to the location I had chosen, directly onto the island, not to hotels and things like that. So I wanted to build something organic and really make an impact on people's lives, the way it had made an impact in my life. And so after I dropped the last person off at the airport and they were on their way home, and I had spent a whole week with these women from all over New York State. They had known me from different ways, but didn't know each other, and chose to go there and create this sisterhood. I was like, wow, you did it. And I just wanted to cry, and that was really powerful, because I had done everything I wanted to do, and everything made sense that I had gone through that put me in that position on that island. So
that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
What would you consider your greatest accomplishment in your life, like outside of work?
So again, in a vulnerable way, I had my son. And that was an unplanned pregnancy. I'm a pro-choice person, but I never had imagined that I would keep a pregnancy in a moment like that. I mean, I was a single mom with my 2 girls, and we're very busy, super busy, no time, and I was working in banking at the time. Things were going really smoothly. I had just bought my second investment property, so I was like really setting myself up. And man, when I found that out, I was just devastated, literally. And if you've ever been in that situation, you haven't, but any woman, it's not easy, and everyone's like, oh, babies are a blessing. No, not always, So it was something I really had to come to terms with, like, what am I going to do? How can this be part of my story? Sure. How because this is a curveball.
Yeah, and it's almost like, when you really try to practice things ritualistically, like, you have everything planned out, and you have all the timing of everything that you want to happen. Life can throw you curveballs.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes they're beautiful curveballs, like but really it can have an impact and really sort of change your trajectory.
Absolutely.
It sounds like you use that more so as a positive.
Yeah. So I think if you go through experience that's so challenging as that, and you look at it as something that's like, well, what am I supposed to do, right? It's because you're facing yourself, right? You're being forced to look at yourself and ask, why am I struggling with this? Because you're judgmental, Heather, that's why. Because professional women don't have unplanned pregnancies. Professional women don't do things like this. This is irresponsible. And that was a story I was telling myself. So when I embraced that professional, educated, badass women can have babies without the dad around, I crushed it. And he's awesome. So that was the one thing. And facing that too was holding me back. To all those ideas I had in my notebook that were sitting there for years, then started to come to fruition.
Right. Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that. So what's something that maybe didn't work out?
I feel like there's more of those stories than there are of the successful ones.
Yeah, I think the human brain leans more negatively, unfortunately.
No, these are in business world, right? We're talking there's lots of things that don't work out at home.
Give us an example.
Things all the time. But let's talk about taking the chance. This is about being entrepreneurs, right?
Right.
I think at heart I've always been an entrepreneur, and some funny things where I just did something, right? So when I was living in Norway, I had my daughter, and I had this cover that went over the car seat, and it was to keep the cold out. And at the time, even in the States, you bought them at craft fairs. People made them. So I'm like, something, I kept being asked about it. Where did you get that? Where did you get that? And I was living in Norway at the time. I'm like, oh, something I could do here. So I got a hold of some distributors in China, and I had, I was like, well, distracted. So I got a hold of some distributors in China, and I was able to make a connection with a guy who would produce them for me, and I would have a shipment and be able to sell them in stores in Norway because people were asking about it. So I went to, I met these guys from different places and figured out one. I ordered like 10,000 of them, and I was going to sell them in Norway. And right yeah. So
sounds like a great business plan.
Yeah, well, it was going though. It was really cool. Like I met with some different store owners, and Norway's great in ways that here there's an influx of just garbage that you do not need for your babies. It's kind of crazy. Sure. And having my first child there, I didn't have any plastic things made in China that were going to raise my child while I was still able to keep my house perfect, right? Like we had to do it ourselves. Like I didn't have like these things to put her in or whatever. So which I can't complain because I use them now. But
they're great.
Yeah, they're great. So. But these carry covers, they're called carry covers. I had like a little website made, and the internet was starting to get better, and I had the shipment, and the shipment arrived. So here's me trying to like fool the system too. Like I was gonna have them shipped into the States because they don't want shipments coming in from certain places. If I shipped them into the States, the taxes would have been cheaper to ship them from the States into Norway. Right. So, and then I moved home. So now I had like 10,000 carry covers in my mom's basement. like this is a horrible idea. But I probably had like 200 sold, before that all happened. And I had connections in different stores in Norway that were all about it. And then I moved home and I was like, this isn't worth my time. So I still have some carry covers.
Do you really?
So, yeah.
For how much?
But, Walmart sells them now, so it's not worth it. But, so what we do now is, for my ex-husband, when his family comes, everybody, when they come, they take a few home with him. And they're in his garage. So now, that was one month.
I mean, we've been doing Fireside Chats for a year now, and we ask the same set of questions. For those of you who've been to several, that is by far the most unusual thing I've heard that did not work out.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
So, but if anyone needs a carry cover, hit me
anybody?
up. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So now, here's some insightful questions for you now. We'll switch gears slightly. You've obviously accomplished a lot of amazing things, despite giving certain challenges that a lot of people go through and face, but you sort of turned, I'm actually going to quote Brenda Dow, you turned some of the mess into a message. I heard that at Coffee and Concepts one time. And it seems like you sort of got that, inherent entrepreneurial spirit where you're always trying to solve whatever the problem is, whether it's cold babies in Norway, there's your solution right there. Now, how would you define success? So do you have an answer that, like, have you had a different sort of understanding of that throughout the different stages of your life? How would you define success now? Has that changed?
Yeah. So, you can look up in the dictionary the definition of success and define it the way it's defined in the book, right? But I truly believe that each of us are born differently with different abilities to do amazing things, right? You're really good at something, right? And success is tapping into that. And using that to do what you're supposed to be doing in life, right? What you were born to do. That to me is success. And sometimes you become too influenced by outside sources, right? And you become too far away from what your body is telling you. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. And I think sometimes that's hard because you have outside influence. You have parents you don't want to disappoint. You have spouses that don't want you to do that because it's too much of a risk on the family. And I get it. But success is when you can tap into that and it feels so good, and then you continue to do that in your career, and then it doesn't feel like work.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, no, that resonates with me as well. And I think, at least I come from a generation, or at least a family where I had to kind of go out and pursue a career in whatever it was I went to school for. Did anybody else grow up in a family like that, where it was like, well, you went to school for that, so that's what you have to go and do? And I consider that sort of an external societal pressure. And I think, especially in a world where, as you alluded to in life coaching business, it's not necessarily, governed. It probably is more so now lately.
No,
so
absolutely not. Yeah.
So it's kind of like the behavioral world. That's okay.
It's true.
Yeah, but don't.
But it's sort of like, in a world where you need a certification to cut somebody's hair, when nobody's life is at risk, nothing's going to catch on fire, nothing's going to explode. It kind of has you scratching your head at the end of the day sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like, do I have to do this thing that I went out and got a certification for, or I went to school for? And so the answer is not always yes. That resonates with me.
Yeah.
Now, how would you give advice to somebody who wants to be successful? And how about we centralize that question to people in the Mohawk Valley? So how would you give advice to somebody in the Mohawk Valley who really wants to be successful or push themselves?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, spend some time alone. When you spend some time alone, whether it's writing or meditation or something where you're listening to the thoughts in your head, your inner voices, and you hear things that you should listen to, right? If it's a fear-based decision, don't listen to it. If it's a decision out of love, something that's for your greater good, listen to it, right? That's first and foremost. Second, pay attention to who's in your circle. Because if you're being pulled all these ways that you don't feel comfortable being pulled by, you need to set boundaries around what's in your circle. Because you shouldn't be pulled in any way you don't want to be pulled, So, and then thirdly, set boundaries, right, around what's in your circle, including the activities you're involved in. If it doesn't have a place in your greater good, and you're just doing it because you're supposed to be, then are you really supposed to be doing it? Set boundaries around the things you don't want to be involved in. Make do with what you have, and then create it for what you want. Yeah.
What would you say is sort of the biggest, what was something that you had to let go? So like piggybacking off that question, what would be something where you're just like, I just can't make that Monday night meeting anymore?
Yeah, how to let it go?
Yeah, like was there like an activity or something that, did you feel yourself like becoming involved in too many things because it felt like the thing to do at the time?
Well, I think I've always been pretty good. That's a lie, because I have been a yes person before too, for sure. I think when I had my son, I really had to pick and choose what was worth my time. Even things I've been very passionate about, like youth exchange, I've completely pulled myself from, Stephen's like, oh yeah, thanks Heather. Yeah. From working with the students, because I don't have the time, and if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no, and you really shouldn't give your time if you don't have it. To be a bad help. You're no help if you're not helping the way you tell them you're going to help, right? So that's a good way to do it, and be intentional with your time. Like sometimes you do have to be selfish, I think, at all times. If this isn't something that's going to benefit myself or my family, why am I doing it right now? There's a time and a place. So kind of picking, like, if this isn't something that's in my process that's going to get me to where I want to be, cut it out.
Yeah. Cut it out. Sure.
And people should understand. The people that care will understand.
Sure. Yeah.
If they don't understand, then they didn't care anyway.
That's true. What would you say some of the best advice that you've received over the years?
So there's a couple of things. I'll share two different pieces that came to mind when I read that question. At any time when I'm challenged, I have mentors that I've been around kind of chanting me on, and you can hear the things that they would say given, that situation. And, one of them is when I'm running or when I'm exercising in general, which I don't have much time for now with a new baby, but like when I get back into it, I'll hear this again. One foot in front of the other, right? This is not a marathon. Right now, what do I need to do given what I have, right? If I'm running up a hill, it's not about looking at the top of the hill and like, yeah, I'm going to get there. That makes it feel overwhelming if you see how far away that place is. One foot in front of the other. Just move. Just move yourself. Slow down if you have to. Rest if you have to. Just move. And that's one that it applies to life. If you focus on something that's so far away, it's like in the fog. It's overwhelming to think if you need to lose 100 pounds and you say like, I'm here to lose 100 pounds. That's not happening today. So don't worry about losing 100 pounds. Worry about the actions that it takes right now that I need to do right now that's going to get me there on an average of the process over the next year, right? Sure. So that's one.
Staying in the moment.
Yeah. If you're injured and you think you're going to go do something that takes, not being injured, and you don't address your body as you need to do, you're going to hurt yourself even more, right? Nurse yourself when you need to, right? So the other one was, the early bird gets the worm, right?
Right.
But only the second mouse gets the cheese in the trap. And that was somebody said to me.
Write that down?
Yeah.
Say it again?
So, the early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese in the trap. And that was said to me by a friend of mine in high school. And I always felt that if I wasn't out and going, I wasn't going to get there. If you're not there first, it's not for you, right? And that's not true. You can have strategy behind every decision. And if somebody wants to be the early worm or early bird, go get the worm, that's fine. But, I'm going to do what's meant for me. And I'm not going to be pressured by what works for you. So, because if you do that, then again, you can compete with each other, that's fine, that's healthy. But if I'm competing with your skills, right, the whole saying about like, if you teach a fish how to climb a tree, he's gonna spend his whole life thinking he's a failure. If I don't wanna go get your worms, I'm not gonna go get your worms. I will be so happy if you do, if that's what you want. But it's not for me, right? So being, intentional about what you're doing in your life, that it's meant for you.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was having a conversation the other day with a group of music students at Hartwick College, and it was sort of like an intro music business class, and some of them were coming up with ideas, and it was like, well, I want to be the best performer there is. I mean, these were some of the things that were being said, and I was like, that's fantastic. I want you to be that person too. One of the things that I expressed to the group, and it's a lot of what Innovation Collective and what you're saying as well, is it's really important to talk to other people in your circle and in your community about the things that you're working on and your goals, because other people will support you to get to that point. The best secret is the best idea is the best kept secret. The best kept secret is the worst idea. People really need to know what you're working on, because that way they can hopefully they can hold you accountable. You may not have to compete against somebody, or maybe somebody who you would have competed against could become a new business partner for crying out loud. I mean, it really could be any number of things. So that kind of resonated with me a little bit in what we were talking about with the Hartwick Music Business class as well. So it's really important to communicate what you're working towards and how you want to get there, because the community will support you.
Yeah, and share what you're good at.
Share what you're good at.
Because if you're an entrepreneur and you want to create a badass team, you're going to pick the people that are doing things you're not good at. But if I don't know, what you're good at, what do I know about you?
Right.
So and it's really nice way to support each other is like finding out what you're good at and sharing it with each other.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. So, who's the most innovative person you've met, and why?
I didn't look at that as somebody who's in the professional world. But I appreciate, I work with men and women, right? But I appreciate people who are raising families and doing business, because that's really hard. That's really hard. And especially now, trying to create people that are going to do good things is the hardest freaking job out there. So when you put that on top of being a professional and handling stuff, like, it's just really amazing. And that's, I don't have someone that I admire so amazingly, like, in a business. Like, there's so many, right? But there's something, when I know someone's raising a family and they're doing something, I like to support them, because it's really hard.
It is hard, especially with the changing schooling dynamics and everything else.
Yeah, that's just a new hard. That's a nightmare.
Everybody's
this
feeling
is
that
not
pain.
going well.
Yeah. Do you read a lot?
I like to read.
You do?
When I have time.
When you have time.
I'm definitely somebody who has a stack of books on her nightstand, and each of them have tabs of places that I've been like, oh, that's really good, let me mark it off.
Right.
But I don't read as much as I should,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you just apply an external pressure on yourself about how much you should be reading?
No, I don't care. I don't have time. No. I do care, but it's like, it's not a priority of mine right now. But if there's something, like, sometimes something comes up, like somebody will ask a question in life coaching, and I'll need to figure out a resource that I can help guide them. I assign homework assignments. Reading is one of them, to kind of open your mind to, like, how normal the struggles are. And there's a lot of books that people write about their struggles. So I like to find good resources that are.
What would you say is your top 3 favorite books everyone in this room should read?
Yeah, so I have 2. I started reading Michelle Obama's book right now, and that's so good. And I'm probably only like a fourth into it, but I really love her. Another book that's really good is Everything is Figure Outable. She's just really good, and she swears, and she does all the things that I do. And I related with that book. She's genuine. Yeah. She doesn't care, but owning that, and then I care. It's not that I don't care, but I'll say it like it is. So I like her stuff because she says it like it is, and everything is figure outable. You can fester in your worry, but if you figure becoming a victor, instead of a victim,
Right.
So I really like that, what she has to say. And another book that was really eye-opening to me, as far as compassion, which I think is really important to have compassion, especially for the community that I live in. There's so much culture, and and struggle, different kinds of struggle. Somebody might struggle with something that I don't really struggle with, and they're struggling because they don't speak the language, or they're struggling because they can't find the resources they need to do something super basic because they're not from here, you know. But it's called The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down. And it's a book about Hmong refugees who came here and, you know, but spent their life on the run for many years, and they talk about that experience. But the biggest thing about it is that the one daughter has epilepsy, and something in Western medicine that we see as something major that we need to medicate. And they see it as something that the spirit of God enters the body and they fall down. So it's a really unique perspective and offers some compassion, but also understanding of like Western medicine, you know, Asian culture, and you know, it was really good. I completely recommend it if you live in Utica, especially.
Was it written by a local author here?
No, and actually the Hmong refugee population, the majority of them are in the West, in California and stuff. So I don't know the author off the top of my head. Yeah, but The Spirit Catches You and You'll Fall Down.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
One more question, and then I'm going to open it up to the room. So start thinking about all your awesome questions.
Can't wait.
You've been, you know, sort of Central New York your whole life. You've traveled abroad. You've gained, you know, a lot of sort of worldly experience in your travels. And you've been able to kind of come back and give that back to the community, which I think is really special. Which is why we're talking to you today. What would you say, in terms of Mohawk Valley, the greater Utica region, what would you say is something that the area needs for it to sort of grow into an economic powerhouse in the particular industry? Or what would you say would be the answer to, you know, positioning Utica and the Mohawk Valley as an economic powerhouse regionally?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. First and foremost, I would say more integrated neighborhoods. You can't support Utica if you don't want to live in the Utica School District. You know, it's really important to me. So, and I say that, you know, my older girls go to Whitesboro, but that was a decision I had to make because I didn't want to change them when I moved into Utica. But now I live in Utica, and I have lived in Utica 10 years, and my children will go to Utica. I have 2 more that haven't started yet.
Yeah.
So, and I'm super excited about that at this time now more than ever. That's one thing. So, but embracing a positive outlook. Everything is possible here. You know, we have the commute here. You could live on the other side of the city. It takes you 20 minutes to get anywhere. Who wouldn't want that on your way to work?
I lived in DC for 8 years. This is a nice arrangement here.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I love that. So just embracing, like, we do have so many nice things to offer families to be here, and if you don't have something positive going on in your life, find it, because it's everywhere here. And I see a lot of familiar faces that are out there doing everything, you know. Bring your friends that have negative attitudes and just try to get them to come with you to some of these events, because there's a lot of positive going here, and it's contagious when you get around it.
I appreciate that. Who's feeling positive right now? Boom. All right. We've got Heather Beebe. Let's give it up for Heather Beebe. Unstoppable leader. Really appreciate talking to you tonight, for sure. We're going to open it up to the group. Anybody got any questions for Heather tonight? In the back there.
Hello, Heather.
Hi.
First of all, I am a junior at college, and I'm looking for added places. And I have a statement and a question. You mentioned earlier that, you mentioned earlier that you had an unplanned child, and you judge yourself, but you end up going, like, crazy, and like you said you had different thoughts. And I was gonna ask, like, how did you and how long did it take you to embrace your insecurities and beat those different thoughts in order for you to grow further?
Yeah, I love that question, because it's no easy task. And I would say I'd spent 2 years in a dark place, and it was really hard. And that's what, and I spent a lot of time alone too, you know. So I had my girls, and I have my son. So Alicia can vouch to this. I'd be dragging my son to every soccer field and everywhere, you know, and then I would go home and I would be by myself, you know, with the baby and the girls. So when the kids are in bed at night, you're by yourself and you're raising these kids. Like it was hard. So, but I faced it by literally looking at the stories I was telling myself, like that this wasn't possible. Why was I saying that? Well, because I was raised in a traditional value system that said you must have children in a marriage only, you know. But I was already divorced, so why was I even believing that? And then, you know, so I was just looking at these old belief systems that I was raised in. And then, you know, and if somebody didn't like it in my family, or if somebody didn't like it in whatever, like that, they weren't paying my bills. They weren't there at night with me. They were not getting up in the middle of the night with that baby and taking care of it. So why was I worried about what these outside judgments were? So my fears around the outside judgments were really judgments I had on myself. And when I owned it, nobody questioned. Because I showed up, solid, But it took me a long time. And I still sometimes wow, it's unbelievable that to think like the way I used to think about it. And now I'm like having my third baby daddy over here with my daughter,
Yeah, we got both of them, huh?
If you want to have a baby, yeah. So, and it's wonderful. My family it's everything it was supposed to be, and I didn't understand it at first, but I had patience and was willing to face the stories I was telling myself, but digging a little deeper. Where did those stories come from? And the intention of those stories wasn't ever to make me feel bad in my adult life. They were to raise me in the best way that I was raised, right? With the people that raised me, did the best job they could, that they knew how, right? So coming to terms with that as well,
Great question. Mm-hmm. Questions for Heather? Go ahead. Taya, go ahead.
So,
could you repeat that? What steps did you need to take to become a life coach? Was the question.
So it's a super unregulated industry, and anyone, so anyone can really say like I'm a life coach, And there's many certifications you can take. There's stuff online. There's stuff that you can take in person. What I would say the most important thing you do is work with a coach that challenges you. And puts you through hell to face these things that you feel, are holding you back, right? So, because until you can do that, for yourself, you shouldn't do it with other people, and that's important because I'm not any better than anyone I work with. I'm with the people I work with. I've been through what the people I work with are going through, right? And there's still days when I'm like, oh, what would I tell somebody if they were telling me this, right? So, to get the tools, and then, find a program that has a good reputation, reach out to people who have taken it. That's always good feedback, but yeah. Does that help? Yeah?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, another question here.
What are the top 3 things that keep you in Utica as a business person?
Top 3 things that keep you in Utica as a business person?
That's a good question. It's virtual, so there's no boundaries, right? For me right now, I think the life coaching and mental health in general is just being like it's starting to get serious now in Utica, and in other larger areas it's been serious for a long time, so I think that's nice. So it's like something fresh, and important, especially with COVID. It was like really serious. People are starting to understand like how normal mental health is, and it's cheap here. It's really cheap here. So if you can work virtual, I don't have any boundaries. So, but I did have an office. I don't now because I don't need to. I'm doing virtual and I had the baby, so it all worked out. But Utica's cheap. And we said this like in the beginning, when we decided to come back to Utica in general, the first business I ever owned was with my ex-husband. We owned a bar and grill, the Galleria in York Mills. I had no clue what I was doing, but we literally chose this area because it's like a Monopoly game that hadn't been played yet. A lot of stuff was available. It was affordable. We could have a house and a business, and the people it's good. So
it's a pretty tight-knit community.
Yeah.
Other questions for Heather? Steve.
Oh, sorry. Heather. It's Heather. Okay, good. Yeah. Steve. Yeah, great. There's a quote. It says, "So thankful I didn't end up with what I thought I wanted."
Yeah.
Your story is so. I'm sure that when you were 10, you were like, yeah, I want to be a life coach on top of you, right? It's not necessarily what you thought. So what would you tell people is to keep going? Because maybe you thought you wanted to be a banker or you wanted to be a bartender, but what would you tell people to keep going that maybe you veer off, you take a left, you took a right, but you are where you're supposed to be right now? Right?
Yeah.
So what would you tell people? What would you advise
So
them?
yeah, well, if you have drastic change in your life that puts you on a different path, accept the grief that comes with it. I think that's something we don't talk enough about. It seems like, when somebody's grieving, it's because somebody passed away, and that's not necessarily always why we grieve. We grieve ideas, we grieve scenarios, things like that. So accepting where you are is really important. The vision itself is never dead, right? If you identify what you want in a vision, and explanation between the two, visions and goals. Visions are open-ended. They happen, they unfold over time, right? Goals are more like timestamps. Like by the end of this week, I need to clean the closet next to the bathroom. You know, like, so your COVID schedule, right? Like all the things that you want to do. So that's a goal. It has a timestamp on it, you know. So, but a vision is more about an emotion. How do I feel when I get to where I want to be, right? So keeping that in mind. So when you have to adjust the path or adjust the process, accept that, you know, there's grief. It's sad. I didn't get there as fast as I wanted to, or I didn't get, you know. But you know, when you're chasing something that you shouldn't be, right? It's all about making an intentional decision. Am I making this decision because I'm scared to face the alternative? Or am I making this decision because it's actually something difficult that's getting me closer to that vision I'm working on? And that's how you adjust.
Right. And I guess to that great question, Steve, I guess to that point too, like, so take me back to, you're at Whisk Bakery, Jay Leonard, great guy, by the way. And you're sitting there at the coffee table and you've got, I think you said you wrote it down in a book or a napkin or something, right?
Yeah.
Did the thought of how steep the learning curve would be to take on something like a new business and life coaching, you knew it had to be daunting, right? What sort of thought process did you go through to say, okay, despite how daunting this is, I'm still going to do it?
Yeah. I mean, that's what it takes to open a business, is to have faith that I have no clue how the hell this is going to go. But I do know that it makes me feel good right now. And if every day you wake up with the intention that I'm going to do something that makes me feel good at the end of the day, it's going to work out. Yeah. No matter which direction it takes, you know. And yeah, you got to have faith that you can't see, you know, but you trust yourself. And if you don't work on that, yeah. And it was something I really wanted.
It kind of reminds me of like, I can't remember if I've used this example before at a Fireside Chat, so please forgive me for you diehard fans. But there was I can't remember what Olympics it was. It was like the 400 meter, and the news reporter came out and interviewed this insanely fast, you know, human being, and they're like, "Hey, are you nervous?" And the runner, I can't remember what country he was from, he was like, "No, I'm actually really excited." Like while he was standing on the start line of the 400 meter dash in the Olympic Games. And I think a lot of times, like if you think about it, there's the same physiological things that happen in your body when you're excited and when you're nervous. It's the same exact things. And it's really easy to sort of put like nervousness or doubt into a box and just put it on the shelf and be like, you know what, I'm never going to pursue unstoppable you because it's too scary.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, like, so I know personally, being an athlete, you know, being somebody who likes to chase down goals, for me, that was a really like pivotal moment, an interview for me on the television screen. Because that kind of helped me shape my thinking and my feelings around, pursuing things in the uncharted territory. Or, of course, he's excited about it because he's been training his whole life for this. Like, this is the time to show his skill set. He knows exactly how long the race is. He's got a little bit of a leg up in terms of, you know, if you were to juxtapose his scenario with yours, like he knows how long the race is. You don't have any idea. You're starting unstoppable. You don't know. Yeah. But would you say does that resonate with you as well?
Yeah,
sort of nervousness and excitement?
Yeah. Oh, and so that's how you listen to your body, right? To know that, like, oh, I'm doing the right things. Like, I literally can feel adrenaline when I do this. That's a natural response. Your body's like, yes, I'm winning, and it's natural, right? If you feel like crap and you can't even sleep the night before because you hate your job so much, your body is literally telling you, quit that job. Why are you wasting your company's time? Why are you wasting anyone's time? Like, if you literally can't sleep at night because you hate the fact of getting up in the morning, why are you doing it, right? And that's your body's physical response. It's a natural thing. So when you're getting adrenaline, or you feel like, I'm gonna pick on Sean for a second. He sings, before his show, he's like, he does this like thing, you know, and it's like a physical, like, it just gets pumped up. You get excited when you go to your job. You get excited when you're doing something you're really good at. And you don't always get that feeling. There's hard days, that's reality. But the majority of the time, you should feel good about what you're doing. And it's a natural response from your body, not something forced. And not something induced by having a glass of wine. Not something induced by doing something unnatural, right?
Absolutely. Any last questions for Heather? Go ahead, Hannah.
Doing emotionally involved work and being a mother, what boundaries do you set to set yourself up for success, both at home and as a business?
Can you say that one more time on the microphone?
Sure.
For the folks in the back, one more time.
Doing emotionally involved work and being a mother? What boundaries do you set to set yourself up for success, both at home